Hi folks, I want to talk about Rick's medical records and his confessions and get some of your thoughts on a little thing that I think was overlooked maybe. But before that, just to clarify, because some people are getting the wrong impression from some of my recent videos, I haven't made my mind up on Rick Allen. I'm hoping that a trial will help me do that. The legal side of things, what's going on lately, i.e. Rick getting a fair trial, has nothing to do with my thoughts on whether he is guilty or not. They're a total separate issue for me. I think most people can separate those two things, but it seems some can't or get confused about the difference. Like, even if I thought Rick was 100% guilty in a lone wolf type situation, I would still be saying the same stuff about the legal shenanigans happening at the moment. Everyone is entitled to a fair trial and be treated fairly, no matter what you think of them. Even if it is obvious that they are guilty as hell, I still wouldn't change my mind on him getting his attorneys back, and I still wouldn't change my mind on thinking Judge Francis Gull is a goal. But there are parts of this case, like the chances that Rick Allen is BG, which I can totally see. The most damning evidence so far seems to be his own words. Putting himself there that day, the way he said that he stepped out onto the bridge, he put himself on the bridge, said he was looking at fish. The way he walks, I still do think, given what we know, he is probably bridge guy. A week, probably, and probably is a long way from definitely, and a very long way from beyond a reasonable doubt. Like, it's a confusing case. We were told there was a social media connection. Kegan Kline, or his dad, was the last person to talk to the girls. Someone in the Kline house also googled the Martin gas station in Delphi on the day of the murders. Why? Never mind the fact that Kegan confessed in an interrogation that he was there but didn't get out of the car, and on the way home someone, like his dad, chucked a knife and a phone into the Wabash River. The investigation was going hard down that road. The Wabash River was searched. A burn pit in Tony Kline's mother's house was searched. And then, out of nowhere, seemingly totally unrelated, Rick Allen is arrested and charged. We were told today is not that day, and others are involved, but now all that's gone. The Kline's social media connection, Google searches, are never to be talked about again, it seems. And when it comes to Rick Allen, I also have issues with, and always have had issues with, wrapping my head around what happened when they went down the hill. The crime scene and Richard Allen just don't fit for me. I also struggle with the idea that Richard Allen, at his age, with his background, could go to the bridge on a random Monday afternoon, carry out a crime like this, and leave a crime scene like that alone. It's very confusing, and I want this to make sense. I would love if we got to a trial and all the pieces just slotted into place and it made complete sense. But I haven't made my mind up on Rick. I don't understand how anyone can really at this stage, given what little we know. Some people are dead set on him being innocent and that he's been framed, and some on the other end of the scale think he's as guilty as they come. People who think he is definitely guilty are accusing me of defending a killer that already confessed. So who cares how he's been treated? He's a monster, and I should be ashamed for defending his attorneys, blah blah blah. And on the other side, people who definitely think he is innocent are probably going to be annoyed by this video. I'm upsetting both sides. I can't win. I am a terrible YouTuber. When we first learned of Richard Allen's alleged confessions to his wife and his mother, it was all running in parallel with what seemed to be like a mental breakdown for Rick. Forget what his attorney said for a sec. The stuff about him eating paper and all that. Like, impartial people said that he was zonked out of it at court hearings. Lights were on, nobody was home. He no longer looked or acknowledged his wife. There was a clear difference in his demeanour, and it seemed like his brain was broke. He looked and appeared to be heavily medicated. That has since changed. It seems like whatever he was in, he's come out of. But that's what was happening at the time. We have very little context for those confessions, but it just didn't sit right with me at the time that they were genuine. Like, why no? Why not in interrogations? Why to his wife? Why to his mother? And is it even plausible that someone could carry out this crime the way it happened, not flinch for days, weeks, years afterwards, not flinch in interrogations when they're arrested, and then just crack in prison? It sounds mad, but somehow, some way, these confessions made me think, I'm not so sure you did this, Rick. And because I was thinking like that, I questioned if that was the plan, if that's the intention with these confessions, to get people like me thinking like that, a fake breakdown. But whatever was going on at the time, I don't think it was fake. And it looked like the defence team was going down the road of this guy, because of the conditions he's been kept in and because he's innocent and the stress of all that, he falsely confessed to his mother and to his wife in an effort to push them away, as he didn't want them upset and worrying about him, and he didn't want to wreck their life. He thought it would be better if they just thought he was guilty and moved on with their lives. And I thought that was a fantastic excuse that would work well at trial. I practically believed it before they even said this. So I was like, sure, I can see that. And then they moved completely away from a really great excuse into a really bad one. Why? Why did they move away from that excuse? The new confession excuse that came out in the Franks document was that even though Rick didn't tell his attorneys this, they think that Rick was threatened by odious prison guards to confess to his wife and mother, which makes very little sense. If they were putting pressure on Alan to give a false confession, there's a lot better ways and people that he can confess to other than his wife and mother. It just baffles me that they would move away from a ready-made, really believable excuse into this. Why would they do that? It seems that the reason that they did this is because of his medical records. Physical and, more importantly, mental. If they wanted to say that he had a mental breakdown, then they have to hand over his records to the prosecution, his medical records. And Slick Nick was all over it. He was asking for them. This is in the court records before the Franks document came out, Nick, and many of us thought also that Rick was maybe going to try to go down the insane route, or at least the defence was going to use mental health as an excuse for the confessions. However, that would mean that Rick Allen's mental health records would now become part of discovery and it has to be handed over. So I think that's the reason for the switch up. The reason that they moved away from a really good excuse into a really bad one. Why did they do that? What is in those records that the defence team so badly does not want to hand over, even if it means burning a fantastic excuse? Is it another confession? Would that warrant the switch up? Unless it's... I'm not sure. Unless it's the fear that the doctor or psychologist would take the stand and give a professional opinion on whether Alan was being genuine or not. That's a problem, alright. And somebody might be able to help me out with this. I don't think that Rick Allen's defence can bring in their own doctor or their own shrink to have a one-on-one meeting with Rick. They can hand over his files, they can get the opinion based on files, but that's not the same as going in and meeting him and sitting down in a room. Like, his attorneys are barely allowed to meet with him. Sometimes they're not even allowed in the same room. So I don't see how an outside doctor can. I think the responsibility for his health, physical and mental, is on the state, is on the prison service. So they're like, no, we don't want your doctors. It's our responsibility. We have our own. So if a prison doctor or prison shrink has something in Rick's medical file, I don't think the defence team can get their own doctor or shrink to add directly to that file as a second opinion. I don't think so. Maybe they can. And having someone in those positions on the side of the state can be very beneficial to prosecutors. Take Taylor Shabusiness case as an example. If she had money, I believe she would be not guilty by reason of insanity. I'm one of very few. I believe that, think that. She's a complete psycho. She met the standards of insane a few years previous to the crime. She came off her meds. She chops her boyfriend's head off. And the state is like, nah, you're actually fine. You got better. And everyone's okay with it. The judge throws the book at her. Like having a good shill in positions of doctors or psychologists in prisons is very, very useful for prosecutors. So what could be in Rick Allen's file that has his defence team so worried about handing them over? Is it, if it is just another confession that came around the time of the others, are they just worried about the doctor or the shrink going on the stand talking about it and how credible they'll come across? Like, that could be a problem, but I don't think it's that. So I've been rattling my little brain trying to figure out what it is, what potentially could be in the medical file that is so damning to Rick Allen. And I have a few thoughts. One of them is a bit out there, bit of a hot take, but they're my thoughts nonetheless. Is there something in that file that Rick Allen said that only the killer could know, and that's recorded somehow? Something that works against this is the fact that apparently Rick Allen just had, before these confessions, before the breakdown, he had access to some of the discovery items. So even if he did say something like that, the argument could be made, yeah, sure, he knew it, he seen it in discovery. Is this something to do with a potential motive? Did Rick spill the beans on his motive during a confession? That would be a huge problem. If he just came out with something like, he was walking past the girls, he thought they were laughing at him, he snapped, I don't know. Like that, combined with the ability to put the doctor on the stand and say, yeah, I believe him, I believe he's telling the truth here, massive problem. Or, and this is my hot take, I doubt it's true, but the whole thing has me thinking, what's the worst possible thing that could be in there? We've heard very little from Rick Allen's defence about Kegan Kline or any of the Klines. And surely at some stage they're going to bring them up. Like, I'd go as far as putting Kegan on the stand, ask him to repeat what he said in his airbase interview. And there's a lot of stuff in the discovery that they can talk about at trial related to Kegan. All about him and the account being the last person to talk to Libby, Google searches. However, there's no indication that the defence is going to go down that road, which is surprising. They've not gone anywhere near Kegan or his dad yet. Like, I was convinced that they were going to go down the Kline road. They were going to talk about Ron Logan, talk about anyone but Rick Allen to get him out of it. So it has me thinking, are they trying to distance themselves from Klines? Or distance themselves from the Anthony Shots account maybe? If there's actually a connection that we don't know about yet, does Rick's health records shed some light on that? I don't know how that would even play out in the medical records. But the way the defence moved away from a fantastic excuse into a really bad one makes me think that whatever is in there is very, very bad for Rick. And because the way the defence has run away from it, and because there's no mention of Kegan Kline, or no mention of the fact that they already told us there was a connection to the Anthony Shots profile, like, these are things that we thought the defence was going to dive headfirst into, but instead they're running away from them. Why are they running away? Like, Rick's defence is saying an awful lot in court documents, but is there some insight to be gathered from what they're not saying, who they're not talking about? Because if there was a connection, if they can somehow prove a connection to the Anthony Shots profile, I don't see any way out for Rick then. But again, I don't understand how that could come to light from medical health records. But I definitely think whatever is in those medical records, the defence does not want the prosecution to have them. So it must be pretty bad for Rick, whatever's in there. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts on what could be in there and why the defence sacrificed, burned a really good excuse to give a really bad excuse. Good luck. God bless. I hope everyone has a nice day.